All right, guys, Haters Season 2, Episode 2. It's been a few days since Episode 1, but your boy had to go to New Orleans for a bachelor party. I had a great time. Thanks for asking up in this piece. Now, let's get to the topic at hand here, But before we do that, I just want to say one quick thing, and that's this. All right? Obviously, the Hater is back full-time, as I said. But the channel is going to revert back to more comedy and more hateful rants. Not as much of these dissections of videos and concepts, right? We're going to keep that going, obviously, because that's what I like to do. But I also like making people laugh and laughing myself. So with that being said, let's get to it, cuckolds. First of all, your boy was scrolling through YouTube Shorts, and I saw a clip. I didn't even watch the clip, to be honest. I saw the thumbnail. And it was like some kid had hopped the barricade to go meet his hero, Cody Rhodes. And I thought to myself, this kid's like 7, maybe 6, maybe 8, somewhere in that age range, right? So this kid probably has never seen AEW before in his life. So how the hell does he know who Cody Rhodes is? You know what I mean? How does he know who he is? Cody Rhodes has been around for like a year. No way a kid's obsessed with Cody Rhodes already after Cody Rhodes has done nothing. Maybe he's obsessed for a day after Cody Rhodes won the Rumble, but let's be real. What was the point of all this? Now, let me put it to you this way, all right? Cody Rhodes is now the winner of the Royal Rumble, and apparently now he has fans. This means nothing to the hater, and this means nothing to anyone that understands wrestling. The reality of the situation is as follows. Cody Rhodes is still a jobber and still a mid-carder. I don't care if he wins the Royal Rumble. I don't even care if he beats Roman Reigns clean at WrestleMania. He will always be a jobber. It's really that simple. You know what I mean? He can never be elevated above Roman Reigns on the card. He'll never get the reactions of Roman Reigns. It's only a matter of months before they start booing him, right? Cody Rhodes is lame, okay? He's a dork. Let me put it to you that way, right? When people started booing him in AEW, he was like, he became John Cena, basically, except he's not cool enough to be John Cena. So, here's an argument as to why Cody Rhodes is a mid-carder. The only 3 matches that this cocksucker has had thus far, aside from the Rumble, where he eliminated, what's his name, Gunther, so it's not even like that impressive. I mean, he eliminated a mid-card champion. The only 3 matches that he's had have been against Seth Rollins, who, let's face it, whether you like him, love him, or hate him, this man is a jobber now. He's a mid-card jobber, right? Here's how I know. For some reason, at this year's Elimination Chamber, which is in a couple of weeks, and which I'm probably not going to watch out of spite, one of the matches is an Elimination Chamber match for the United States title. You see, motherfucks, they've exhausted the reason to have the Elimination Chamber. Obviously, Roman Reigns is not going to be in the Elimination Chamber. He's just too good for that, right? Just like when Lesnar was champion, he's not going to be in that. I mean, maybe 1 year he might be, but generally speaking, he won't be in the chamber. 1. 2. Obviously, Reigns is in a feud with Sami Zayn now, so that needs to take precedence. I don't know how Sami Zayn earned a title shot, but he did, right? Whatever, it is what it is. I mean, conceptually, right? Like, how's he number 1 contender? He hasn't won anything. He hasn't been impressive at all. But anyways, that's not here nor there. And then secondly, considering that there's only 1 title now for all intents and purposes, you can't have a number 1 contendership match at the Chamber. When you had 2 titles, it was very simple, right? Either both champions would defend at the Chamber, and the winners of those matches would go on to WrestleMania, and one of those guys would fight the winner of the Rumble, or what you would do instead is the very simple alternative, right? You would have a number 1 contenders match for the opportunity to main event at WrestleMania. Instead now, it's a 6-man Elimination Chamber, including people like Montez Ford, right? For the U.S. title, which is a title typically defended, if it's defended at all at WrestleMania, on the pre-show. So let me put that in a way that people can understand. We've gone from Shawn Michaels versus Triple H versus Kane versus like Angle and whoever else was in the first one, to Montez Ford, right, versus Austin Theory, who is pretty cool, and Seth Rollins. Now, with all that being said, I put it to you this way, cuckolds. Why would I be impressed by Cody Rhodes, whose only victories come against a guy who is now in the first ever U.S. Championship match at Elimination Chamber? Think about that. Why would Seth Rollins even want this title, right? This is the title people throw away. Like they win the big one and they discard the little title, right? But whatever. This video is about Cody Rhodes, and that's what we're going to focus on here. The fact is, he's not a star, and this is just one of the many pieces of evidence that prove it. The other piece of evidence is his past. Just because this guy went and wrestled, Evil Uno a couple of times in that pissant company AEW, does not mean that he should be able to come back as a star. He hasn't improved himself enough. At least Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal came back yoked after being out of the testing pool for a while, if you know what I'm saying. Or maybe not. Maybe they just got yoked, but let's be honest. Chances are they did some shit. Cody Rhodes doesn't even look better than he did when he left. He's bleached his hair because he thinks that's a substitution for personality. And he has a neck tattoo. That's about it. That's about all he's done. His promo skills are shit. I'm sick and tired of hearing how Cody Rhodes, who has a lisp, is good at promos, right? He's not good at promos. Even if he didn't have the lisp, which I'm not going to hold against him, it is what it is. It's not even that big of a deal. His promos are overproduced, hacky, and generic. He comes out there saying the same 5 things that John Cena said. But for some reason, the rules are different for Cucky. They're different. People accept him and they love him. Until they don't, motherfucks. And that's going to happen soon. The AEW fans, which to their credit, when it comes to turning on people, they do so faster than the slower WWE universe, right? But they turned on him. And why? Because he's boring and generic. And they perceived him as being someone who is taking time away from the newer guys. The same thing's going to happen in WWE. Except for the newer guys part, because he is a new guy. But people are going to be like, this is boring. It's the same shit over and over again. Just another John Cena, except this one is less cool. So with that being said, why would anyone care about Cody Rhodes winning the Royal Rumble? As far as I'm concerned, he is the worst winner maybe ever. Certainly the worst winner in the era of winning the Rumble takes you to WrestleMania, right? Yeah, Hacksaw Jim Duggan won once too, but he didn't main event WrestleMania the next year. You know what I mean? Or that year, I suppose, right? Think about that. He's worse than Nakamura. At least Nakamura was presented as a guy that is going to be a star. He didn't become a star, but he was presented as one. Cody Rhodes is presented as a mid-carder because he's wrestling with Seth Rollins. In the past, he was represented as a jobber. And in the distant past, let's not forget that, in the distant past, like when I went to WrestleMania in New York, when it was Cena versus Rock, Cody Rhodes was supposed to be in like an 8-man tag team match, right? It was like him and Damian Sandow and like 2 broads versus like Sweet Tea, Brodus Clay, and like the Funkadactyls, I think. You know what I mean? And of course they scrapped that match because they didn't have time for that horse shit, right? He was a guy whose matches were scrapped, and now he's in the main event. People are going to interpret this as like, wow, he really went and reinvented himself. Because the dumbass wrestling audience doesn't understand that changing your hair color and getting a neck tattoo is not reinventing yourself. The entire premise of Cody Rhodes leaving was that he wanted to go out on his own. He wanted to move away from his father's legacy and his father's shadow. And what does he do now? He just keeps channeling that same shit over and over again. I give the man props. He made his way back to the big leagues. I can't hate him for that. I don't even hate him. I think he'd be a passable mid-carder, but he's not a star. And if you're hell-bent on making him a star, this is not the way to do it. You slow build this fuck, right? Not his 4th match is the Royal Rumble and he wins it. You slow build this fuck. And if you don't have the patience to do so, then at the very least, you put him in Gunther's spot at the Rumble and you have him last the whole Rumble. That's the only way to make this guy. How much sense does it make that Edge, who is like almost 40, or probably 48 or 45, whatever he is, right? That Edge has to come in at number 2 and has to like go wire to wire, as Michael Cole kept saying, right? He has to stay there the whole match to reestablish himself. And he's Edge. He's a multiple-time world champion. When he retired, he was the champion. And Cody Rhodes comes in at number 30 to beat a tired Gunther. Think about what I'm saying, motherfucks. Cody Rhodes, he's eliminated like 3 people. One of them is Gunther, or maybe 4 people, who knows, right? And then he also beat Seth Rollins 3 times. That's all it takes. I understand the Rumble and how it's presented, but that's all it takes for the viewer to just accept it? No, motherfucks, no. In my opinion, the only way this match ends is Roman Reigns wins. But, of course, there's a significant possibility that the Cuckster might get it done. However, even if he does, even if he beats Roman Reigns clean, he's never going to be the star that people think he is or people want him to be. It's just never going to happen. Let's just say he beats Reigns. The next night he's going to come out on Raw with a 45-minute entrance, right? And he's going to look at the crowd, take a mic in his hand, pretend he's going to say something, and he's going to lower it, People are going to chant, you deserve it, because they're unoriginal retards. Keep this in mind, because everything I'm saying is going to happen. Then he's going to say something, if it weren't for all of you, I couldn't have done it. It's going to be the most generic and hacky shit ever. And then a real man is going to come out and challenge him, but except it won't be a real man. It'll be like Seth Rollins or someone like that, right? It'll be someone that had like a decent WrestleMania match, but maybe Orton comes back and challenges with like a friendly rivalry match, and then eventually turns heel and hopefully wins, right? But that's what's going to happen. There isn't much there, right? He has no one to feud with. He's not interesting. He feels like a mid-carder. The TV numbers are going to go down drastically because Cody Rhodes has never been, nor will he ever be, a draw. And people are going to lift with their thumbs up their ass, asking themselves, well, how could this happen? Cody Rhodes is a star. And you will all think of the hater and the last several years where I've been saying that Cody Rhodes is not a star. Cody Rhodes is a respectable mid-carder, and I've given him the props that he deserves. Sometimes I've given him more props than he deserves. He deserves some props. I'm not going to pretend that he's a complete jobber. Like, he's better than Darby Allin, obviously, right? And Darby Allin's one of the good ones in AEW. But Cody Rhodes is not a main eventer. And in my personal opinion, the fact that this is becoming a thing now, like Drew McIntyre set this precedent of leaving and then coming back and being in the main event for like a cup of coffee, right? Well, he was champion for like a year, but you know what I mean, right? That's a problem. This cannot be a precedent that is set. Because then, when someone gets fired, they just go somewhere else, do nothing, or in the case of Drew McIntyre, get jacked, and then they come back and become champions and win the Rumble? That's the new plan? Remember back in the day, cuckolds, when the Royal Rumble was used to do one of two things. Generally speaking, it was used to reestablish a superstar as a main eventer, right? So you had people that were actual main eventers in the Royal Rumble, and they were going to win, right? So I'm talking about 2000, when The Rock won. He was like the hottest star in wrestling at the time. He won because he's the hottest star in wrestling, all right? He was already a main eventer, but the storyline was so well written that despite him being a main eventer, Triple H was avoiding him, right? Triple H instead had his hands full with Mick Foley, Mankind, Cactus Jack, whatever the fuck that asshole was that week, right? But clearly everyone knew the top heel was Triple H and the top face was The Rock, right? So The Rock was going to win because he's the top guy. Then the next year Stone Cold wins. Same scenario. Top guy versus the other top guy, The Rock, who would beat Kurt Angle to go to WrestleMania, right? And we have a match that's a WrestleMania-worthy match. Now, today we don't have stars like that anymore. I understand that. But the Royal Rumble also has historically been used to push motherfucks up that are complete jobbers and are going to be pushed into the main event at least either full-time or for the foreseeable future. I'm talking about the Rey Mysterios of the world. I'm talking about Chris Benoit's of the world, right? If you count the SmackDown Rumble, the Eddie Guerrero's of the world, right? These people are the ones that were getting pushed, right? Triple H coming back after injury, after having a shitty IC title run when he was with Stone Cold, right? You use it to reestablish people that have fallen a bit down the card. You use it to give Randy Orton his moment. You use it to give Batista his moment. Triple H gives people their moment at WrestleMania, and the Rumble gives it to them before WrestleMania. That's how it used to be. You win the Rumble, you beat Triple H. You win the Rumble, you beat Triple H, right? And then periodically, you go back to the old formula where you have like The Undertaker win, right? And, you know, he's a legend, so he gets the win, right? Instead of all this, now it's basically a way to push someone that hasn't earned it yet directly into the main event. Nakamura, let's see how that worked out, cucks. Cody Rhodes, let's see how that's going to work out, right? Not well, in my opinion. I don't care if he becomes champion. That's not important. The point of the Rumble is not to make someone champion and justify the fact that they're going to get a title shot, because you could have just given it to him instead of Sami Zayn. The point of the Rumble is to serve as the penultimate moment in someone's year-long journey, right? The season starts the day after WrestleMania. Someone becomes established. They have a few meaningful feuds. Maybe they hold the mid-card title a bit. They have like a feud here and there with the champion or like some sort of aggression against the champion. Then eventually this culminates with them winning the Royal Rumble. It's written in the walls, right? It's written in the stars. Smoke and mirror, cuckolds. Smoke and mirror, right? Let me put it to you this way before I bounce. We had Edge. Edge, in my opinion, is probably the last superstar that has gotten a legitimate and well-balanced push. He's the last one. I can't think of anybody else that has gotten a well-balanced push. It's got to be him. It's got to be Edge. Maybe you could make the argument of Roman Reigns, but not really, because Roman Reigns was just dominant the whole time. But it did take him some time to have his moment against Triple H at WrestleMania, where he actually, you could argue, he established himself as the guy, right? And then even then, it wasn't very clear. But you have to think about these things, right? Edge. Edge was in the mid-card for a fucking eternity. First, he was a tag team guy. Then he went to the IC title. He stayed there for a while. Then he flirted with the main event, got injured, came back, and then he was established as a clear upper mid-carder. An upper mid-carder, cuckolds, is someone who is too good for the Intercontinental title, but not good enough for the world title, right? We used to have a lot of these fuckers around. Christian, Edge, Kane is like the perpetual one, right? Like, nobody was making Kane the IC champion, right? He was just Kane. He's the guy that could, at any moment, easily become the next WWE champion, and who at any moment certainly would squash the Intercontinental champion in 2 minutes. That's who Kane was, right? Big Show is another one. These guys, right, where it's like they have no interest in being IC champion, but they're not quite good enough in the card at the moment to become world champion. Edge fit this perfectly. Then he won the Money in the Bank, very predictably so in my opinion. He won the Money in the Bank. Jericho's another great example of like that mid-card guy. Miz is one, even though Jericho and Miz have had a lot of IC title reigns, the point stands, right? The point stands. Edge was ready to go. He wins the Money in the Bank. Automatically, everyone's thinking, well, this guy can cash it in whenever he wants, so why would he wait? But it was the most slow-burning storyline ever. While he was doing this, Edge was in several high-level prominent feuds that were elevating him from the mid-card guy to the upper mid-card guy for sure, and arguably to the main event. His feud with Matt Hardy. His feud with Kane that involved Lita, cuckolds, remember that? All of these things culminated into Edge becoming ready to be champion, right? As a matter of fact, he won that horseshit Gold Rush tournament thing by beating Kane and aligning with Lita to get a title shot on top of the Money in the Bank. So I thought what was going to happen was he was going to get his title shot, lose the title shot, and while John Cena celebrates, he hits him with a case and cashes in the Money in the Bank, having his second match of the night and spearing Cena, which will allow for a full feud. But think about what happened. Think about what happened. Instead, he loses that clean. He screws Cena over against RVD at One Night Stand. Cena eventually becomes champion again. And somewhere in the circle jerk, Edge cashes in. I think it was before this, but the point stands, right? Edge elevates himself to the main event after a year of solid build-up. Then, of course, he goes to SmackDown and becomes the SmackDown champion and has, like, epic matches there, right? Because Cena had to be the Raw guy, and everyone else that wasn't Cena had to go to SmackDown. Batista, Edge, etc., right? So with all that being said, Cucks, compare that push to the push of Cody Rhodes. Edge barely made it. People back then were not quite sold on Edge as a main eventer, right? Because his matches were like losses to Benoit, or like he was feuding with like Sylvain Grenier, you know what I mean? But he had to have a solid, long-term push to become somebody. Cena had to have a solid, long-term reign as the U.S. champion and then eventually earn his way to fight JBL after narrowly losing the Royal Rumble against, what's-his-face, Batista, right? These were serious pushes. Batista, Edge, Cena. Edge was the last of these guys. Real, serious pushes. However, Cody Rhodes is not getting a push like that. And that's why he will forever be a mid-card jabron. Do you understand me? You have to at least elevate someone to the level of, let's say, like a Booker T, right? Booker T in his SmackDown days. Before Booker T became King Booker, he had to be elevated to that point, right? Booker T was clearly an upper mid-carder. He could have been the champion at any given moment, but more likely than not, he'd be feuding in non-title matches against people like Kurt Angle, Christian, all these guys that were kind of on the same level, right? Like, they weren't John Cena, but Christian was a guy you could plug into the main event if need be. Kurt Angle, obviously, was a guy you could plug into the main event. Booker T was a guy, oh, you don't have anybody? Put in Booker T, right? That was the strategy. That's what MVP was doing, right? MVP, they had him become U.S. champion, and eventually they were moving him towards that upper mid-card tier, right? Then he became a jobber, but the point stands, right? The mid-card title, more often than not, is a step backwards. Challenging the mid-card champion after becoming world champion should be reserved only for storyline purposes. Like when Triple H aligned with Stone Cold and had no choice but to be the number 2 because Stone Cold, his ally, was the champion, so he needed the other title. What's the other title? The IC title, right? That's the only way it's tolerable for someone like Triple H to go after the IC championship. It's not tolerable, or if they're doing like a belt collector type gimmick, right? Where like Kane was like the IC champion, the tag team champion, then he became the hardcore champion, you know what I mean? Like, and the whole point was like, this guy's like a serious main eventer now, you know? Other than that, there's no reason to do that. There is a distinction between mid-carder, right? Upper mid-carder, and, motherfucks, main eventer, right? No chance in hell that next WrestleMania, Roman Reigns is in the opening match against like a returning Kalisto, right? There is no chance of that happening. There is, however, a significant chance, I would say over 50%, that at the next WrestleMania after this coming one, Cody Rhodes will be in the opening match against like Gunther, Seth Rollins, possibly Ricochet for the IC title. This is a very solid possibility. You understand me? Very, very solid possibility. You have upper mid-carders and you have main eventers. And Cody Rhodes is none of those. He is a solid mid-carder. He is on the card, or he should be on the card, where Val Venus was. But they're going to insist on pushing him to the main event to have a moment because there's no foresight as to what's going to happen next. And what's going to happen next is people are going to start booing him when he starts wrestling with a guy who's better than him, right? When he starts wrestling with, I guess, Randy Orton, people are going to cheer Orton and boo Cody Rhodes. You dumb fucks. That's what's going to happen, okay? And with that, the hater is out, motherfuckers.